Good morning, everybody. It is 10:02, so why don't we get started? It's great to see everyone here for the second meeting of the Infrastructure and Energy Collaborative meeting. I'm Aaron Fickner, president of the New Jersey Council of County Colleges, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this important work. I know many of you have been working hard over the last couple of months to continue and expand on this work, and this meeting is another step in the positive direction of aligning education with the changing needs of the labor market. Since we all met a month ago on Zoom, we've had our first industry leadership team meeting for this industry, a very robust and interesting discussion that you'll hear about later, to talk about industry trends and to really get educated about the changing workforce needs of this very vibrant and important backbone of the state's economy. Our centers of workforce innovation, both in renewable energy and construction, have been meeting and working hard to develop action plans for their work in the months ahead. And we've had quite a few meetings with many of you to continue the conversations of how do we partner in new ways to create an aligned education system. So thank you all for joining us. As you all know, this initiative is a partnership between the community colleges and NJBIA, the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. And NJBIA has been a tremendous leader in New Jersey in workforce development and an incredible partner in this effort. And so it's my pleasure to say good morning to our partner, Michelle Sekurka, who's the head of NJBIA, for some opening remarks. Good to see you, Michelle. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Aaron. It really is a pleasure to join you once again this morning to move forward this great partnership. You know, in particular, this area, infrastructure and energy, these are extraordinary goals of the governor right now. And we continue to advocate for money, our federal money, to go into infrastructure. And we know the opportunities in energy, which means this industry is going to be booming over the next few years with offshore wind and all the other investments that are going to be made, water infrastructure in particular, and the money that is being put aside finally in that area. Well, what a shame it would be if we have these incredible opportunities and we don't have a workforce to back it up. We already know the challenges we have filling those technical positions, and we are sitting on an incredible opportunity to make sure that we can fill that gap and provide that stream for our future generations. So we're excited to partner with the Council of Community Colleges. Aaron, you're such a great partner. You know, last week hearing from our businesses on where the needs are, and we always talk about the need for the technical, which is those vertical skills, you know, in this particular type of industry. But I remind us each and every day the need for the foundation skills as well. And let's not forget those, you know, teamwork and collaboration and critical thinking and self-direction. You know, those are those fundamental employability skills that any individual who has them is able to pivot from industry to industry. And we want to build those all at the same time. So thank you all for being here. I apologize in advance. I'm about triple booked this morning, but I wanted to make sure that NJBIA was here to thank you. I know how busy you all are, and you continue this awesome momentum. The stars are aligned, and we're going to do great things here. So thanks for being a part of it. Back to you, Aaron.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Great to see you. Thank you for popping in. I know you're always double booked and triple booked, and so we appreciate any time we get to spend with you and your amazing team at NJBIA, Chrissy and Chris and Kyle, who has just been incredible to this team. So thank you, Michelle. Good to see you. And thanks for making some time today. So we have a really full agenda, a really exciting agenda. We're going to start with a discussion of credentials. We're going to then talk, we got a great presentation from the Wind Institute that is leading all of the offshore work planning and effort in New Jersey. And so we're really excited that their team is here. And then we're going to hear about some innovative work that's going on at our community colleges around offshore wind. And we all know that the state has made an incredible investment and commitment to expanding our renewable energy production through a really exciting investment in offshore wind, which we hope will really transform the way we get energy and really position New Jersey at the center of the entire Atlantic corridor in terms of offshore wind production. So we're going to start this morning with a really special, two very special guests who are going to talk a little bit about their perspectives on credentials. We have talked a lot in this initiative about the need to build stackable credential pathways. We know that there has been a proliferation of credentials and credential organizations that offer credentials. I think we heard yesterday at our collaborative meeting that there's over 1 million different credentials offered across the United States. And so it's really important as we talk about building stackable credential pathways that we really understand what that means, what the challenges and the opportunities are, and some definitional issues. So we are really pleased to be joined by two nationally significant thinkers about issues of credentials and pathways. Our first panelist this morning is Betsy Tessler, who's a senior research associate at MDRC. And good morning, Betsy. Good to see you from New Jersey. For those of you who don't know, MDRC is really, in many ways, the leading nonprofit research organization in the country that leads rigorous evaluations and studies about workforce and economic opportunity and educational interventions. And MDRC has been an incredible partner with us in the community colleges on, I think, 3 or 4 separate innovative initiatives around student success. And Betsy's done some incredible work evaluating programs around economic opportunity and mobility that involve credentials. So thank you, Betsy, for being with us, and look forward to your input. And we're also joined by Jennifer Freeman, who is a senior director at Jobs for the Future. And those of you, I'm sure, probably know about Jobs for the Future, but Jobs for the Future is a national organization with wide reach, devoted to expanding economic opportunity for all. They are a research, technical assistance, and consulting organization that has done incredible work at the national level and all across the country. Jennifer also has been an incredible support for our Center for Student Success. We are one of, I think, Jennifer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, over 10 centers of student success around the country.
17.
17, wow. So we're one of 17 centers that JFF supports with incredible research and technical assistance and support. So could not be more happy than have Betsy and Jennifer with us today to talk about their perspective on credentials. So Betsy, why don't we start with you? You've done a lot of interesting work in thinking at MDRC about pathways and credentials. So, share a little bit of your thinking with us about where we are and where we should be going as we think about credentials and stackable pathways.
Sure. Thank you, Aaron. Nice to be here with everyone. So let me start by saying a little bit about what we know and what we don't know about short-term industry-focused credentials, especially non-credit credentials and stackable pathways. And I'll hopefully offer some food for thought as you consider how to better create, expand, and use your post-secondary education ecosystem here in New Jersey, especially in a way that advances equity for New Jersey's citizens. So a lot of what we know about credentials comes from evaluations of sector strategies. These evaluations include, you may have heard of some of these, Work Advance, Project Quest, the PACE evaluation, that's Pathways for Advancing Careers and Education, and HPOG, which is Health Profession Opportunity Grants, to name a few. And PACE and HPOG are among the earliest evaluations to specifically use a career pathways framework for program effectiveness research. So the programs evaluated in these studies are all short-term, sector-focused occupational skills training programs aimed at economically disadvantaged workers and job seekers. These programs have other key elements in addition to technical skills training that research suggests are essential to their effectiveness. Some of these were alluded to earlier, including job readiness training, or what we might call soft or professional skills development, support services like transportation assistance, and referrals to services to address other kinds of barriers to training and employment, assistance with job searches or job placement, and sometimes continued services to participants after they find a job to help them advance. All of these services are linked to the targeted sector, including the soft skills. So for example, most of the programs involved in HPOG, that's the health professionals focused program, offered soft skills training that specifically emphasized how to interact in healthcare settings. Almost all of the sector strategy programs that have been evaluated covered all or part of the cost of training. And those that did not helped participants apply for financial aid. Many of these evaluated sector programs were implemented by nonprofit, community-based organizations, but often in partnership with community colleges. And of course, many community colleges already incorporate some of the features found in these evidence-based sectoral training programs, such as being responsive to local industry need, offering classes in a cohort structure, having dedicated recruitment staff and case managers who can support students to remain engaged and complete their programs. So while the overall employment and earnings effects of these sector programs are mixed, they have been shown to be effective at helping participants complete their skills training, obtain credentials, and find initial jobs in the target sector. So finding that initial target sector job is what is key here. Evidence from multiple studies suggests that skills training and credential programs generally have one chance to train students for a job in a high growth industry and to help them get their foot in that door so that they can advance on the job. From what we know, and there's a lot that we don't know, and I'll get to that in a bit, most people do not come back for additional training in what we think of as the stackable credential model, at least not training that leads to a change in job title, which is, I think, is the typical way we often think about career advancement. So findings from the HPOD study, for example, showed that within the first 3 years following study enrollment, less than 10% of participants attended a second training program after completing the initial training and finding a job. So they were mostly training for entry-level jobs, and they mostly had those first-run jobs. This is not surprising given how disruptive it can be to keep going in and out of work and training. So how do community colleges and other skills training programs take people with relatively low educational attainment, train them for a well-paying middle skill job in a high growth industry in a very short time? This is not so easy, obviously. MDRC has found that to really train people for middle skill jobs, community colleges and other programs have to be fairly selective in their screening when considering who has the skills to succeed in these kinds of training programs. And in fact, this is one of the criticisms of these effective sector programs, that too many people are screened out. The alternative is being less selective and training people for more entry-level types of jobs. In that case, embedding some coaching around how to advance on the job once someone is employed could help set them up to try to gain additional skills on the job and maybe to pursue additional training and credentials down the line. So this leads to what we don't know. From what MDRC has gathered through the increasing number of studies we're conducting on workforce training programs in the community college setting, data on short-term industry-focused programs, especially those that are non-credit, are severely lacking. The data in the non-credit credential training arena are so lacking that we don't really know whether people attempt to stack credentials, whether they succeed, or what the labor market payoff is. There are not a lot of data that tell us whether people who complete short-term training programs, again, especially in the non-credit arena, are working, at what kinds of wages and in what kinds of jobs, let alone whether they go back to complete additional credentials or academic programs. So I'll end with a few questions to consider as you discuss building out your post-secondary education ecosystem. Who are you aiming to recruit into these programs? And who do you want to be able to move along these stackable credential pathways? If by definition these are working people, or eventually will be working people, particularly from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, and if you want them to be able to go back to school for additional training and credentials, what types of supports will they need to be successful, and how will the colleges provide those supports? What are other ways that the colleges might change how they deliver these programs to be more accommodating to the people you're hoping to train? And if, as the evidence seems to suggest, you have one chance at getting people the skills training they need to be successful and to meet employer needs, how will you use that time to set them up to be able to advance in the future? And finally, how will you collect the data needed to be able to determine whether this model is working, both in terms of labor market outcomes and continuing education and training outcomes? Thanks.
Betsy, thank you so much for sharing the state of the research findings. And I really appreciate, and we all do, that when MDRC comes to these conclusions, they do so through a very rigorous evaluation process, really state of the art. And so we can be confident in your findings. And I also appreciate your willingness to share what we don't know, because that challenges us to think here about what we can do to build that ecosystem that promotes equity and inclusion and opportunity. Jenny, good to see you this morning. Thank you for being here again with us for another discussion. You too at JFF done a lot of research and work consulting on issues of stackable credential pathways. How do you all approach this issue, and what insights can you share with all of us here in New Jersey?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron, for having me. Betsy, nice to see you. And congratulations, first of all, to everything that you're doing in New Jersey. This is fantastic. The way you've structured these partnerships between the post-secondary sector and industry. And it just sounds like Michelle said, you have tremendous opportunity in this industry based on how you're growing to really make a difference for a lot of people and to build a workforce and contribute to economic growth. So a lot of things that Betsy said definitely are the things that are not true that were found not to be true in terms of like people don't move along in the research that she talked about are, understanding why that is and then what might be done instead seems to be the place to really look. So I appreciate that grounding in like the research of really rigorous evaluations. And then where we come in is that I can share a lot of anecdotal evidence and softer evaluations and indicate what we see are a lot of indications of best practice of what is emerging as successful practices that are not yet scaled to the degree or that they can be evaluated in the way that that Betsy just described. So let me share a couple things that kind of offer a little bit more like glimmers of hope that there are ways to get people to move along. That statistic is always a painful one, Betsy, whatever you said about the percentage of people move along. So obviously that's the goal, is getting people beyond that entry level. First of all, where I'll start is to say that it is essential that post-secondary institutions right now look at shorter term credentials. As you all well know, enrollments are really declining. The numbers of people who, I don't know the specifics on New Jersey, but nationally, there's a lot of decline in enrollment. During the pandemic, people who are especially typically marginalized in post-secondary education systems have become more so. People do not have the same kind of access or opportunity. People from lower income communities, people in lower wage jobs. And those are the populations that are really sort of the untapped workforce. Those are the people that you want to find and bring into your programming and set those programs up in a way that doesn't just put them at a very low entry level job that perhaps doesn't have them earning much than they earned before they came to you, but puts them on a career advancement pathway. So there's a couple things that we have seen that are essential there. I mean, first of all, in terms of attracting people, making it very clear that the credentials, the pathway that you've developed is really tightly aligned with what the labor market is looking for, what employers need, what employers in this particular field are asking for. And putting together the supports that Betsy talked about, the holistic support, so people can persist. We have seen a lot of success with programs that start that initial credential at a community-based organization for people who are not necessarily thinking that they want to go to college per se. That is not in their frame of reference. It does not feel possible. But let's say they might be involved in an adult basic education program. They might be involved in the Head Start program. They might be involved in whatever at a community-based organization. That we have seen many examples, and we're involved in a project called Boost, funded by Kresge, that is a set of those programs right now, where that initial credential is earned in the context of a community-based organization. It articulates that they earn credit for it. So it is very connected to a pathway where the next step is at a community college. The community college is involved, oftentimes provides the training at the site of the community-based organization. And they get a lot of career navigation assistance. So they really can map out a pathway for themselves and understand where they're going. So that's a really important element of success. Another really important element of success, again, to echo something that Betsy said, the notion that really structuring a pathway so that it is more feasible that people come back. So working closely, so I just was speaking with the president at Lorain Community College Lorain County Community College in Ohio. So here's one example that is sort of off the top of my head. I just heard about it, but there are many. A learn and earn model where they have developed a whole series of essential short-term credentials that bring people in, and they have a really impressive rates of people continuing on to additional levels. Part of how they did that is that the additional level is a learn and earn program. So it is that next level, it teaches people things in the context of the workplace. So it's really about designing these credentialing systems that designing the learning delivery with employers, so that as people are working in that work at that first level, they have an opportunity to gain. It's structured. The work that they do is structured in a way that allows the college to see what they're learning and to document what they're learning and to offer credit for it. And therefore, so they're not leaving work to go sit in a classroom. They are getting credit for what they're doing at work. So those kinds of earn and learn models. Apprenticeships obviously are one kind of learn and earn model, but they're not the only kind. So structuring things in a way that allow people to be able to do the next step. The earn and learn model is one of those ways, a work-based learning component. Another way is more hybrid options, modularized options, where you go back and get a very, your programs aren't stretched out over a semester, 4 hours a week, but are much more intensive. So you go back and get it like little chunks. And competency-based education, which means being able to get credit for the skills you earn, and you be able to demonstrate competence as opposed to credit for time spent in the classroom. So the college folks among you who in this audience will know what I'm talking about. Those are also, all of those kinds of different ways of delivering training and demonstrating or counting learning are ways to help people continue on along the stack.
Thank you, Jenny, for all those very good insights and perspectives. And I really appreciate that the two of you bring different perspectives to this work based on the methodologies and approaches. We have the rigorous evaluation side of MDRC and the more field-based involvement of JFF, and both of you raised a whole set of questions for us to think about here in New Jersey. I'd like to encourage everybody on the line to put in some questions in the chat for Betsy and Jenny, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. I know many of the things that they've said, I'm sure, are leading to questions and thoughts among all of us here in New Jersey. But let me start off with a broad question for both of you. A key element, and both of you, I think, touched on this, and thank you. Jenny's going to put some things in the chat, and we'll put some things in the chat from Betsy's organization, make sure you all have their resources as well. One of the things that, that we are working on here is understanding the needs of employers so that the credentials that we embed in our ecosystem are of value. And I think that is a challenging piece, is how do we go about this undertaking of making sure that the credentials that we are giving people are valued and in demand. And I know, Betsy, there's data components to that about what happens to existing students. And I know, Jenny, you've thought about some work on this area as well. So as we embark on that issue of building these stackable credential pathways, thoughts that either of you have on how to make sure that what we're doing is completely aligned with the needs of employers. Jenny, you want to start with that first?
Sure, I will start out. Well, luckily you have a lot of employers at the table right now. So looking at what the employers in the industry that you are building your programming around, looking at what credentials those employers are looking for, those employers recognize as important to the skills, important to build the skills of their workforce, are what you go for. And we do a lot of work with MC and Burning Glass to look at those are data sources that allow you to look at what is in job ads, what kinds of things are employers actually looking for when you look at job postings, and then validating that with local employers, really, sort of saying, this is what we're seeing in the data and the research. Does this comport with what you're, with what happens in your case? And certain, in some industries, it was some employers don't, even credentials, even certifications that are used in the industry. IT is an industry where there are a lot of certifications that people test for. It's very clear what they've learned, and all the industry uses them. There are some manufacturing certifications, to use that example, where a lot of smaller employers don't necessarily know what they are, don't necessarily look for employees that have those certifications. So then it is a bit of a matter of also kind of working closely with educating the employer, sort of saying, these are the certifications that it seems to us are teach the skills that you are looking for. And then it's a way to and kind of work with your employers and have them sort of recognize that and agree to that. Then you kind of have a common currency. If you have an industry recognized credential, there's a way to have a sort of common currency and understanding of what kind of skills you're talking about. So employers know that the folks that they're going to get from your institution have what they're looking for. And then it also is a way, I know we talked yesterday, Aaron, about non-credit to credit articulation. It's industry recognized certifications where there's actually an exam involved and it's actually very well documented learning outcomes, is another way to help ensure articulation and matriculation also from the community college to the 4-year level.
Yeah, great points. Thank you, Jenny. And Betsy, in your research and your review of the research literature, how would you suggest we approach this issue from what you've seen work and maybe not work in your work?
I think I don't have too much to add to what Jennifer already said. One of the things we've learned from some of the community colleges we've worked with relates to, again, the approach is going to vary based on the industry and based on the local employers. There can be very, if there's enough demand for a very customized type of program and credential that can work for some employers, it might not matter to the employers if this is a nationally industry recognized credential, as long as it's meeting those needs. We've seen from some colleges we've worked with where there are a variety of employers within a certain industry that all have something a little bit different that they need, that the college can bring them together, sort of determine what are the common basic fundamental skills that are needed across all of them, and offer training, a kind of a customized training that would meet most of the needs of many of the employers in a certain industry in a certain region. And some additional specific skills would need to be learned on the job. So again, I think it really does depend on the industry. It depends on the employers in the region. And just the other thing I'll say, which is something that MDRC is always thinking about, is the trade-off between how customized and how specific a credential program is. In other words, you want to be able to train people who can go out and find a job right now, but also will be prepared to find the jobs of tomorrow, so that there's, you know, enough of the more sort of general education incorporated in, so that folks who complete the training programs are, you know, themselves nimble enough to be able to pivot when the economy changes and when the skills demands change.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Betsy, for all of those really important points. I want to kind of end, you know, with a broad question about data, because both of you brought up, I think, data in different ways. Betsy, you really made a fine point that we don't have enough data, and that, Jenny, you talked about some of the labor market data needs that we could pursue. We are committed through this effort to make sure that we are building some data infrastructure to support this effort, and we're partnering with the State Department of Labor and Workforce Development. But we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a longitudinal data system in New Jersey, the NJEAD system, that we frankly don't tap into enough. We've got a consumer report card ETPL system that I think we can build on here in terms of getting better data on students and their outcomes. And some labor market data infrastructure. But as we embark on all of that work, you know, are there some pieces of advice that you can offer us about, you know, how we might approach building that data infrastructure? What kind of data we should be thinking about? What are the most important elements that we should be focusing on in this area of data? And I know who wants to start, Betsy or Jenny, who wants to tackle that first? Betsy?
Sure. So I think being able to collect data all along a pathway, so that you're, you know, understanding, first of all, who is coming into these programs, who is underrepresented in these programs, where does recruitment and outreach need to go to bring people in who could benefit from this training, but currently are not participating. Clearly being able to track how, you know, persistence and completion of programs, credential attainment. We've heard from many colleges that they have good data on completion, but they often don't know about credential attainment if the credentialing exam happens outside of the college, or that the college is just reliant on the student to report back. And then being able to link to, you know, state unemployment insurance records would be the ideal. So you really can track labor market outcomes, and then also tracking data enough so that you can measure if people are coming back and continuing to get additional credentials, or moving from non-credit to credit and completing academic degrees as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And the one thing that I would, the specific thing that I would mention that Betsy touched on a bit is really being able to make sure to tie data across systems. So if you recruit if you recruit a student in an adult basic education program in a community-based organization who then enters a non-credit program, do they enroll in a credit-bearing program, and do they ultimately get a job? You're tying the data systems of 4 different, because many colleges don't actually have non-credit and credit-bearing students in the same data system. That is a problem that should get fixed. And then, but as it currently exists, you're looking at one person who is moving along 4 different systems that capture the data. So you need to be able to integrate those data systems, which it's a huge political football, and but there are states who have done that, and it can be done, and it can be done in a way that really recognizes privacy concerns and all the issues that people raise that are sort of throw up as barriers to that. It can be done, and it's really essential that it be done to see, as Betsy said, like to see who you're serving, and to make sure that ultimately the credentials that you're awarding are showing that people are attaining jobs in those fields, and that they're moving up in terms of their wage levels.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being with us today. I know this is your second time this week in our collaboratives meetings, and I very much enjoyed this conversation and the other conversations that both of you were involved in. I think you gave us a lot to think about. You gave us some inspiration of models that have worked in other places. We're going to look at the MDRC research in more detail. We'll look at the Boost program and some of the work of Jobs for the Future. But thank you so much for being with us. And we hope to stay in touch with both of you and your organizations as we go forward in this initiative. We want to make sure that we're building this initiative based on the best thinking from around the country. And both of you represent a lot of really great ideas and really good scholarship and work and partnership that will inspire us going forward. So Betsy, thank you. Jenny, thank you. And everyone, please join me in a round of virtual applause for Betsy and Jenny, and look forward to working with you both. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks.
All right, so now we're going to transition to the next part of our meeting, and I am very happy to pass the baton to our director of this industry sector, Stephanie Staub. Good morning, Steph, and also want to acknowledge Stephanie Samuel, who is also on the team in infrastructure and energy. We've got an absolutely fabulous team here supporting the work. So Stephanie, good to see you. And I will pass it off to you to introduce our next great speaker and the next element of this morning's program. Good morning, Steph.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And I want to say thank you to Jennifer and Betsy for that insightful dialogue. Industry credentials allow the workforce to demonstrate the mastery of skills and knowledge, and it's critical for all industries. But it's especially important for an industry like we're going to talk about next that's completely new to our state, like offshore wind. So that is our next segment, and thank you for introducing Stephanie Samuel. Those of you who have questions, please do put them in the chat. Stephanie will be monitoring and feeding them to us later. So we are thrilled to be able to welcome Fabio Hermann from the New Jersey EDA Wind Institute to give us an update on offshore wind in New Jersey. Fabio, welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, all. As Stephanie mentioned, my name is Fabio. Oh, Stephanie, chance you could get the deck up. I'd love to.
Let's see, Catherine, are you gonna, or Lauren, can you
No worries.
get his deck up? There we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, again, good morning, everyone. My name is Fabio Hermann, and I'm the Senior Program Officer for Wind Institute Development at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. And I'm honestly very excited to you all today. I love talking about offshore wind and our activity. And today I'm going to give you an overview of what's going on in New Jersey, but also drill in on the workforce development and research related efforts that we're leading. Next slide, please. So it's not often that we have the opportunity to develop an industry from the ground up. This is a once in a generation opportunity. It's estimated that offshore wind will result in over 150 billion in private investments over the next 15 years. But to do this right, we want to make sure we are driving the economic and environmental benefits of offshore wind to New Jersey with special consideration of the communities that have been historically underserved or overburdened. Next slide. So the bottom line is, folks, that when we think about offshore wind, we have to center that it is both a core policy to meet our aggressive goals in the state of New Jersey of 100% clean energy by 2050, but it's also an economic development driver to build a stronger and fairer New Jersey. Next slide. New Jersey is an emerging hub for offshore wind energy. Under the leadership of Governor Murphy, we have a very strong political commitment to offshore wind. When we think about our economic policy for offshore wind, we like to talk about it in terms of 3 Ps. And I'll go over each of these. It's procurement or policy, ports, and people. Governor Murphy has committed to 7,500 megawatts of offshore wind energy over the next 15 years. Folks, that's enough power to power over 3 million homes in the state. and that'll be over the next 15 years. Additionally, we're working with the industry, and we identified that port investments are going to be the key to localizing the supply chain to create more jobs and maximizing benefits of offshore wind to the state. In a few minutes, I will talk a little bit more about the New Jersey wind port, which is our flagship investment, and also highlight other ports supporting the growth of the industry in the state. But to reiterate my earlier point, this isn't only about reaching the 100% clean energy goal, but offshore wind is a clear pathway to creating jobs and developing the supply chain, and that's the third P, people. Next slide. So New Jersey is strategically located. This is a map of all of the available lease areas in the Northeast. And as you see, New Jersey is right at the center. The lease areas are designated by the Bureau of Ocean Energy and Management. And these are what developers typically can apply for. And then the developers would work for, would eventually procure the energy through the states that they'll work with. So beyond being close to the different lease areas, we also have the benefit of our proximity to New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Virginia, all states that are actively embracing offshore wind, and also potential markets for the manufacturing and development of offshore wind parts that will be taking place in New Jersey. Next slide. New Jersey has been very transparent about its procurement schedule, which is the anchor to our offshore wind efforts. The New Jersey Board of Public Utilities is responsible for issuing our solicitations and has set a plan to do so every 2 years through 2028 to reach that 2035 goal of operations. This is for companies that have won a lease area through the federal lease auction. You might have heard the news about the recent auction of the New Jersey Bight. So what happens is these companies will then bid into our state solicitations to sell their energy to the market. Ørsted won our first solicitation with Ocean Wind and was awarded 1,100 megawatts in 2019. Their project is in development phase and with surveying and permitting, and will soon be moving into manufacturing and construction phases with an expected commercial date of 2024. Most recently, this past June, we awarded 2 projects with over 2,600 megawatts in total to Ørsted and Atlantic Shores. Those projects will be in operations in 2029 and 2028 respectively. I want to underscore, folks, the lead time for this last set of solicitations. So the projects were awarded in 2021, but there's a 7 to 8 year timeline before these projects are in operations. That's because there's a lot that needs to happen in that time frame, including extensive site surveying, analysis, and stakeholder engagement to begin the operation, to get to the point of operations. There will also be 3 more solicitations in the pipeline as outlined here, with the next one set to be issued in early 2023. Next slide. So as I mentioned, New Jersey is taking a value-oriented approach to offshore wind development, which means strongly valuing the economic benefits of the states, the residents, and businesses. In all our solicitations, there's a huge emphasis on impact to the state. The solicitations make sure there are supports for local businesses and workers that are looking to enter the industry. You can see from the first 3 projects, there are a number of investments to support these values and commitments. To highlight just a few, Ørsted's Ocean Wind project is bringing EEW monopile fabrication to the Port of Paulsboro, New Jersey. This will require hundreds of welders, painters, and other trade skilled workers, and will serve not just this project, but others in the state and the region. We've also seen huge investments from Ørsted and Atlantic Shores to support workforce development and minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses, and commitments to utilize the New Jersey Wind Port for manufacturing and assembly. Next slide. So this leads us to the second P, ports. The offshore wind industry has massive components which require special ports that are critical for New Jersey's strategy. There are 3 main kinds of ports. There's manufacturing, marshaling, and then operations and maintenance. There are several opportunities for manufacturing in the state. As I mentioned, at the Port of Paulsboro, EEW is building a monopile manufacturing facility. Monopiles are the large steel foundations that are attached to the seafloor and on top of which the turbine tower is attached. See, if folks can see the image, the monopile is actually the yellow portion of the turbine. It holds it still and it allows for the turbine to be steady placed. Operations and maintenance is the second type of port, and these are typically much smaller, and both Ørsted and Atlantic Shores have identified Atlantic City as a location to support the lifespan of their projects. The New Jersey Wind Port in Salem County will provide space for both marshaling and manufacturing for offshore wind components and offshore wind developers. And that's marshaling. Marshaling refers to the process where the various large turbine components are assembled and then placed on a vessel that sails to the wind farm site for installation. Hence the need for proximity to a water source. So next slide. And this brings us to the third P, people. New Jersey already has a tremendous workforce and education system to build upon. That's a fact. We have many workers that have adjacent skills, and we must make sure that to coordinate training opportunities for new workers to meet the offshore wind requirements. There are over 100 different occupations involved in the offshore wind industry. This can include everything from pile drivers and welders to project managers and port logistics experts, engineers, technicians, environmental surveyors, just to name a few. The New Jersey Wind Institute for Innovation and Training will be established to coordinate the many aspects for offshore wind workforce development. The Wind Institute will be an independent entity that will coordinate across government agencies and with industry and community stakeholders on two primary objectives. One, to accelerate the development of a robust and diverse offshore wind workforce, and two, to champion research and innovation that unlocks market potential. Next slide, please. So as you can see, folks, our team has been hard at work to meet both of these objectives. Next, I'm going to go over some examples of different programs and initiatives that we have under each umbrella. Some of them are with some of the partners that we'll be presenting later on today. But if we could switch to the next slide, I'll just give a brief overview of each of the programs. So first up is our program with Atlantic Cape Community College to develop a global wind organization basic safety and sea survival training facility in Atlantic City. Sherwood's going to talk a little bit more about this, but in short, this is a grant that was issued in March 2021 through a competitive solicitation. Next slide. We also made an award to our friends at Rowan College of South Jersey to establish a suite of training programs for wind turbine technicians. Bridget's actually going to talk about this later on as well. Next slide. Another program that I want to highlight is our partnership with Gloucester County Institute of Technology and EEW to expand welding and painting programs at the schools to prepare workers for jobs for monopile and other large-scale manufacturing. Next slide. On the research side, we have several initiatives in progress. A very new initiative is the Wind Institute Fellowship, which is in partnership with Rowan University, Rutgers University, Montclair State University, and NJIT. And through this partnership, we'll launch two programs, the Wind Institute Fellowship and the University Initiative to Advance Offshore Wind. For the fellowship, in its pilot year, the fellowship will support 24 graduate and undergraduate students from diverse backgrounds and disciplines across the 4 schools to conduct independent research on topics that will further offshore wind knowledge and expertise in the state. It will also help build faculty and student expertise in the industry. Next slide. Additionally, each of the 4 schools will receive up to $125,000 through the University Initiative to Advance Offshore Wind to spearhead efforts that lead to long-term industry-valued expertise for students, faculty, and staff. Potential initiatives can include new curriculum development, pre- and postdoctoral student positions, faculty training in offshore wind, and other activities to support offshore wind learning. One other thing that's not covered in these slides, folks, is we issued an RFP for a feasibility study to assess the potential for a research and testing facility in New Jersey for offshore wind. That's an RFP that was issued about 2 months ago, but we're now working to push that to the finish line. So next slide. And that's pretty much it, folks. As you see, we were hard at work to set up programs and initiatives that will make sure all New Jerseyans can benefit from the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity represented by this industry. Again, I want to reiterate our goals of the Wind Institute. The Wind Institute will exist to accelerate development of a robust, diverse workforce and champion research and innovation that unlocks market potential. And that's it. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Fabio, for that really awesome update. Really the significance of offshore wind to New Jersey with regards to both energy and jobs really speaks to the importance of this Pathways initiative, right? So we're going to talk more about the partnership that you mentioned that you have with both Atlantic Cape Community College and RCSJ on these training programs. But I have a couple of questions, and anybody who has questions, please do put them in the chat and we can get to them. But I want to ask, because you mentioned about opportunities for all New Jersey residents. So I'm curious, what steps are being taken to ensure that offshore wind programs engage a diverse group of New Jersey residents?
So that's a really good question, Stephanie. And that's honestly at the core of what we do at the Wind Institute and what drives most of our initiatives. We know this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's an opportunity for us to make sure that folks that have been excluded are included in the future. So we're thoughtfully engaging with all of our partners, which we are fortunately very aligned with on having a strong emphasis for DEI as at the core of all of our initiatives. It's written in our program specs, and we always make sure to have ongoing conversations with our partners like Bridget and Sherwood to make sure that that's at the front of our efforts.
Excellent, thank you. And how will the Wind Institute identify other training programs are needed?
We do it through in multiple ways. One of them is as forums like this. We try to keep our ears to the ground to see what our partners are doing in the state, having ongoing conversations with nonprofits, education institutions, other agencies. But one thing I want to also highlight, folks, is that we're actually in the middle of finalizing a workforce study with BW Research and the Governor's Council on the Green Economy to identify offshore wind workforce needs to get us to that 2035 goal of 7,500 megawatts. That's something that is in its final stages, and in the near future, we hope to have some information to share with the public.
Excellent, great. Thank you very much. And again, our next segment is going to focus on innovative partnerships. And so I welcome Sherwood Taylor and Bridget Satchel to the screen. So Sherwood is the Senior Director of Workforce Development at Atlantic Cape Community College. And Bridget Satchel is the Dean of Career and Technical Education at Rowan College of South Jersey. They're going to talk about their innovative pathway partnership and collaboration on offshore wind safety and training programs. Again, please use the chat for any questions that you have, and welcome Sherwood and Bridget.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So at Atlantic Cape, as Fabio mentioned, we received the Wind Challenge Award. So we are in the process of constructing a 1,700 square foot training facility that will house the GWO Basic Safety Training program. And we are also working with the City of Atlantic City to lease us space in an area you may be familiar with called Gardner's Basin, where we will provide the sea survival training portion of that program. So just a little snapshot of GWO Basic Safety Training is just that. It is foundational safety training for people who are going to work in the wind industry. The sea survival portion obviously is for folks that are going to have to work on boats and work around water. It is a 40-hour training program. It's done in 1 week. So the design is similar to, I don't want to use the word boot camp, but that's type of the design. You go to the training for 1 week, Monday through Friday, and it's complete. The modules that people will take during that are some foundational first aid, material handling, how to move materials around. Fire awareness is a critical module that is covered. Working at heights. So in the 1,700 square foot facility that we're adding to our Worthington campus, the ceilings are 40 foot high, and there is a working at height structure that is going to be fabricated and put in that structure for that working at heights portion. And then we have the sea survival module, where students and the participants will go down to Gardner's Basin for that 1 day and take part in practicing how to get on and off of a boat, how to drop into water, all those types of things that will help them to. And this is the foundational training. So what will happen is once someone has this training, they may experience additional training with their employer once they're hired, their specific training and their specific requirements and protocols. So that is, and hopefully if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Bridget.
Good morning, everyone. As Stephanie has stated, my name is Bridget Satchel. I'm the Dean of Career and Technical Education at Rowan College of South Jersey. RCSJ was awarded the Wind Turbine Tech Training Grant Challenge through NJEDA. We are awarded $819,000 to develop stackable credentials and a career pathway in wind energy. And we're really excited about this opportunity because we will be collaborating with Atlantic Cape Community College so that all of our students who are enrolling in our programs will get that GWO basic safety training with Atlantic Cape. But through this grant opportunity, we will be establishing a wind turbine tech training program. We anticipate rolling that program out in January of 23. That program will be evaluated for college credits at RCSJ, which will then roll into our academic certificate program that we're establishing for wind energy. Additionally, we will be establishing an apprenticeship program so that we give students an opportunity to work and learn as they're preparing to be wind turbine techs with one of the local employers. So we're really excited about those opportunities to really engage our community with preparing them for these opportunities. Additionally, our college will be establishing an associate's degree program, which is an associate's degree in wind power and turbine technology. At RCSJ, we have a premier partnership with Rowan University. And recently, you might have heard that they had received a grant, a federal grant for $500,000 to establish a career pathway option so that our associate degree students can then roll into their bachelor's degree program that they're establishing, as well as certificate programs that go beyond the associate's degree. So this is a great opportunity for us in New Jersey to be actually on the forefront of establishing these programs and creating those stackable pathways for individuals to get into the programs. And through our Workforce Innovation Center that we have for infrastructure and energy, Atlantic Cape, Bergen Community College, as well as RCSJ will be collaborating to establish foundational programs that really support individuals with getting into this industry so that we can address the challenge of having a diverse workforce and preparing individuals for opportunities that are going to be coming up in the future. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but we're really excited about being able to be on the forefront to really bring wind energy to our educational facilities.
Thank you so much, Sherwood and Bridget, for your overviews. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing in the Renewable Energy Center of Workforce Innovation. Bridget, you mentioned our partners. I do want to mention we also have Middlesex as an educational partner, and really taking what you're doing in these programs that you're developing through the Wind Institute grants, but aligning them and creating programs for high school students to get them to understand and get excited for careers in wind energy is really terrific. And I look forward to reporting out on the work of the Renewable Energy Center. But for now, I do have a couple of questions for the two of you specific to this, and then a little bit more just on partnership and how the two of you, it's been a pleasure watching you two in action because you really are very much in sync with each other when it comes to this wind energy programs. And it's really, like I said, a pleasure to be able to watch it. But I'm curious. So our next segment is going to be the feedback from the industry leadership team. But I want to just throw something out there that was mentioned that relates to these programs. So we heard from industry leaders that they're currently, there aren't existing wind turbines in New Jersey to conduct on-the-job trainings. So I'm curious, Fabio, please weigh in on this. I don't know what may have been discussed, but how do you envision us needing to go out of state or out of country for on-the-job training when we don't have existing wind farms in New Jersey? I don't know if that's a Fabio, if that's something that's been, discussed with the Wind Institute.
So is that a Fabio question or
unless Bridget or Sherwood,
I would say historically, when we talk about training, the GWO basic safety training, as I mentioned, is a foundational training, and the employers will build upon that. Our experience with employers has been that they usually have a mechanism to get that seasoned, those seasoned people. I mean, obviously, let's just face it, you can't do this with all new people, obviously, right? So they will have a mechanism to bring those people in, and then those folks would kind of blend into what Bridget and I are going to be doing. So we will have seasoned people at our disposal. We're hoping that some of those seasoned folks will come to town and end up being instructors for us when we start to advertise for those folks. So I think unlike hospitals and other places, when you start this kind of stuff, it's established. When it's new, I think you're going to see people being brought in. And I know the training for my instructors for GWO, we're sending them to Maryland, to a facility. So that is always another option, pick up and go to where the tactical hands-on stuff will be. So.
Okay. And at RC, I'm sorry, Fabio. With RCSJ, with our program, we're partnering with Maersk. So they will be conducting train-to-trainer programs for our instructors and working closely with us to prepare our instructors and adjunct and faculty for these roles. So this would be great for us so that we can continue on with the development of our instructors and things throughout the state to really support us in these efforts.
And one thing I just wanted to add to Sherwood's and Bridget's great responses is that we also have the advent of time. A lot of these things won't be manufactured until the next few years. And for example, the work that's being done at RCSJ and with establishing the laboratory could be a potential medium to get folks some of the hands-on training that they'll need.
Excellent, excellent. So are there opportunities for additional collaboration related to wind or any industry, or between Bridget and Sherwood, any industry outside of wind? But Fabio, with your presentation and some of those other educational programs, are there opportunities for other educational partners to get involved in those collaborations?
Yes. So for example, I mentioned the new fellowship initiative and university initiative. That's in its pilot stage and it's like we're launching it this fall with the partner schools, but that'll be we were hoping to actually expand that beyond the 4 universities I've listed in the next year. As I mentioned, we're also trying to keep our ears to the ground as far as workforce needs, and the best way to train the workforce and get folks exposed to it is by working with academic institutions. So as we develop new programs, we're actively looking for new partners to make sure that they're effective.
Excellent, thank you. So now Bridget and Sherwood, again, working in the Renewable Energy Center, and you two really having such strong involvement with these programs with our other partners, Bergen and Middlesex. I've witnessed how you two work so well together, and how mentoring you are to others within the center when it comes to wind energy. So can you just give us a little bit of insight talk about how that dynamic works between the two of you, and how your partnership really is, very highly effective?
That's a secret. No, but we'll share.
I would say you got a glimpse between Bridget and I of what on different levels happens all across the state with people who are in the positions, continuing ed and workforce development, that Bridget and I hold. So you just haven't been fortunate enough to see that. We think that happens all on different levels. I know for Bridget and I, we're firm believers if one of us rises, we all should rise. And we agreed from the very beginning of the awards that we would go through this together. So a couple of things that we're doing is we don't meet with employers individually in WIN. We're both in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So those types of conversations. So it's just a little, I think Fabio mentioned it, like we're building this from the ground up. So, okay, we're going to build it from the ground up, but we're going to do it together. So we are taking a little different look at it. And it is a little unique for, to do it this way. But if we have a meeting with Orsted's Director of Workforce Development, both Bridget and I are there. If it's Atlantic Shores, both Bridget and I are there. And I think we're just amplifying what we're doing across the state with our other colleagues, and really connecting and bringing our other colleagues in every now and then when we have to, or when it's appropriate. But we've just decided to, okay, this is a big thing. We got we have other people's money here. This is really important, and we can't let South Jersey down. We can't let our institutions down. And we're going to do this like we do all the time together, and really make it effective.
Yeah, because we realize the importance of this industry coming into New Jersey. And with, like Sherwood said, with our partners through our SCEO Infinity Group, through the Council of Community Colleges, we all collaborate naturally. Even though sometimes it's looked at, we're all competing, but especially from the workforce development perspective, we all have that solid foundational interest. So we collaborate. So this is just giving us a better opportunity to even collaborate on something that's new and emerging in New Jersey. So we naturally work together, so we're excited about it. And we know we have to represent for South Jersey since this is the starting point so that this can be scaled up throughout the state.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate all of you, all three of you coming here today and sharing this information. It really is a tremendous collaborative effort, and it's a huge lift for the state of New Jersey and many, many facets of it. So to have, Fabio, the Wind Institute and the NGEDA working with all those education partners, not just Atlantic Cape and RCSJ, but all those you mentioned, the fellowship and the research, it's just bringing industry together. A new industry that really is going to be very impactful to New Jersey. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you for coming today. And we look forward to hearing, maybe some more updates later on in the year. And Sherwood and Bridget, we certainly will be sharing the work of the Renewable Energy Center of Workforce Innovation and the Wind Energy Pathway. So thank you all. Appreciate your time. And we are going to go to the next segment. So thank you much.
Thank you.
And let's see, Aaron had mentioned in the beginning of the day that last week we held our inaugural gathering of our industry leadership team. So they came together to provide their insights on industry trends and engage in deep discussion on the important issues that they brought to the table. So as you can see on the screen here, we've had representation from 11 organizations representing a cross-section of just about every segment of the infrastructure and energy sector. So that included some labor unions, some utilities, engineers, and just other employers, throughout that industry. So if we go to the next slide, what you see here is the matrix that Focus New Jersey presented to the team. This was kind of the 50,000-foot view of trends, challenges, skills and credentials, opportunities, which served as a springboard for discussion. So as you can see on the slide, I'm going to start from that upper left-hand corner. There's really nothing new in terms of each bucket, but just a quick overview. In the trends, we see that energy efficiency and sustainability continue to be a spotlight in New Jersey. As we just heard from the previous segments, there's a lot of attention on offshore wind. And anyone who watched the Super Bowl this year saw a flurry of commercials on electric vehicles. I think there were 7 different auto brands aired, like 8 different commercials. 6 of them focused solely on electric vehicles. So we know that it's coming. And we know that that's going to have a big impact on the state. Challenges, really, this sector is showing that the sector is aging and there is a lack of diversity. On skills and credentials, the sector, like others, have a need for essential skills. Problem solving and critical thinking is needed in the field regularly, and math and computer proficiency are increasingly important. On the opportunities, we've all been hearing lots about the federal infrastructure package, and that's going to grow great opportunity in this sector. With the construction side, when it comes to roads and bridges, upgraded infrastructure with the influx of EVs and their charging stations, a lot of work on drinkable and wastewater infrastructure. So as you imagined, the discussion and the feedback from the industry leadership team didn't fall nicely into those buckets, really, because they're all connected. But there were certain themes that emerged that I think were important to note. So number one, math skills are lacking. And so you heard on that bucket for skills and credentials that mathematics is increasingly important. The math skills are lacking, and sadly, sometimes in some instances becomes a barrier for certain occupations getting into different trade unions, right? So that also can affect the diversity. So math skills is an important thing to pay attention to. We also need to promote technology to attract a younger workforce. So attracting that workforce is a challenge, but technology and the increased use of technology really is going to help us attract those folks who maybe look at some of these jobs. One of the team members said, how do we make dirty jobs sexy? And how do we make working in extreme temperatures attractive, right? So it's the technology. Things like CAD and BIM were mentioned in terms of skills gaps, but they're also representative of the technology that's infused on the job site and often aren't thought of in relation to construction jobs. So that is a key attraction for the next generation. Another trend that emerged was the need to expose middle school students to career options to enable them to take courses in high school to prepare them for these occupations. So again, this was kind of across the board and really speaks to the deficiency in math skills, but it also relates to the need of using technology to attract that younger workforce. So one company shared that their company launched a program targeting very specific low-income cities where they provided devices, both laptops and tablets, so the students can learn about careers in STEM and learn to use those devices. So it was a really great way that they found, again, using technology to attract the next generation to certain occupations, but also helping increase those skill sets so that they are prepared for those jobs once they are able to enter it. And then finally, the trend that we hear across all of our sectors and we talk about in all of our collaboratives really is the aging workforce, right? So with the mass number of retirees, also goes a lot of institutional knowledge. In addition to needing to replace the workforce, you really need to replace that institutional knowledge, which makes apprenticeships and mentor programs really critical in this sector so that that information can get passed down to the next generation. As I said, every industry is facing this, but they really shared a couple of statistics. Two folks spoke up with statistics that really kind of put it in place. So one person said that 34% of the people at her company were eligible to retire today. So a third of their company could retire today. That's staggering. Another gentleman offered that the average age of a land surveyor is 63 years old. And some of the data that he shared with us goes back to 2016 data points, but at that point in time, he said there were 8,300 licensed engineers and only 624 of them were land surveyors. Now there's 568, and there were only 10 new land surveyor licenses issued in a one-year period. So, the need is there across the board of all occupations in this sector, because of that aging population. So really, these are some sobering statistics. It shows the equity and skills gaps. The aging workforce are real issues facing our employer partners, but these candidate conversations really are providing the framework for us to build that statewide strategic workforce plan, which is going to enable us to capitalize and take these challenges and really turn them into opportunities. We have great opportunities, like you see on there with that federal infrastructure package. We know those jobs are coming. We know offshore wind is coming and we're preparing for it. We know that electric vehicles are coming and we're preparing for it. And I believe that this Pathways initiative and those stackable credits, like were discussed, earlier today, really are what's going to help us build those pathways and attract that next generation so that we can capitalize on those opportunities. So if we have any questions, otherwise, I'm going to welcome back to, or welcome to the screen, Catherine Stargell, our Senior Director of Strategy and Partnerships, who's going to talk to us about cross-education sector pathways.
Thank you, Stephanie. Those certainly were very informative segments. I don't know how many times I have asked you, Stephanie, Samuel, or Aaron, what's going on? What is happening with the offshore wind? Because you hear there's certainly a buzz. So it was amazing to get an update straight from NJEDA. So thank you, Fabio. And certainly from Sherwood at Atlantic Cape Community College, as well as Bridget from RCSJ. I want to spend just a few minutes, and we're hoping to maybe get you guys back to your day a few minutes early, but I want to spend a few minutes really describing to you what we envision as a comprehensive cross-education sector pathway that will enlighten you all about the work that is happening within the Centers of Workforce Innovation, which is the other component of this Pathways initiative. So our Pathways initiative is implementing a pathway model. We believe that all of the degree programs available at the community colleges should be linked to all kinds of training opportunities that certainly is happening throughout the state. Community-based training providers, they have courses, the dual enrollment, participation of high school students with community colleges, and certainly private career schools, adult literacy training providers. All of those training opportunities ought to provide a student and adult learner college credits so they can advance along a pathway to degrees and credentials. We believe that there should be no dead end training throughout the state. And really that's what this statewide pathways initiative is about, to connect all of our education institutions in the state to the benefit of students and adult workers and learners, so that every training opportunity anyone has in the state will somehow lead to stackable credentials or degree along their pathway. So that's why you see all these on-ramps and off-ramps, because very rarely these days do high school students come out and go straight to a four-year institution. We know that a lot of the students enrolled in community colleges work and learn. They have part-time jobs. And we just want to make sure that with stop outs, when people stop on their education pathway, those opportunities to jump back on the highway, as this looks like, toward a degree or credential still remains. So this is a picture, basically a graphic about the work that is happening in the Centers of Workforce Innovation. Those centers are smaller groups than this collaborative and are comprised of community colleges, high schools, four-year colleges and universities, community-based training providers, unions, and others. And really, we're starting this year in particular with associate degree programs at community colleges that already exist. And we're the centers, all the partners in the centers are going to make sure those degree programs are connected to high schools, so that high school students are actually earning community college credits and maybe also having experiential learning opportunities to enhance their learning experience. We're making sure that industry valued credentials are embedded in existing community college degree programs. And we're talking about those brand name industry valued credentials that, when added to a student's resume, make them employable in a field immediately. Again, all along, those students, those working adults, are perhaps traveling the pathway toward a degree. However, by obtaining or earning industry valued credentials on the way, they are just that much more employable to the workforce. And then certainly we have four-year colleges and universities, and our centers will be developing model articulation agreements, transfer agreements, such that there is a maximization of community college credits that are transferred. We all are familiar with the Lampet Law, which requires all four public state four-year colleges and universities to accept all community college credits. The hitch is, unfortunately, where there isn't that coordination in curriculum development between community colleges and four-year colleges and universities. Sometimes the credits, the community college credits that the community colleges attribute to a student's major, does not transfer as credits toward the major in the baccalaureate program. And so we believe with additional coordination and collaboration with regards to curriculum, we can ensure and maximize the transferability of all community college credits, such that some major community college credits toward the degree programs aren't attributed to electives at four-year colleges and universities. Also, we want to make sure that community-based training provider courses and unions training opportunities are in fact translated to community college credits, so that in fact, and we have some of these programs already at Community College of Morris, Camden County College, just to name a few of our 18 community colleges, where they have union apprenticeship programs that equate to or have already been translated to academic credit. So once completing those apprenticeship programs and the RTI training, they actually have substantial credits toward an associate's degree. That's very important because, again, those apprenticeship students absolutely are working, right? But they have more credits along the journey to a degree or additional industry value credentials. Included in the pathways work is some focus on prior learning assessment solutions. Certainly all community colleges and four-year colleges and universities have some prior learning assessment solutions. We like to, I don't want to say standardize, but certainly ensure that there is some consistency within the system such that students and working adults receive credit for either prior, let's just say, workforce development courses that are not for credit, but also work experience. We're all familiar with that with regards to veterans, right? That's prior learning assessment solutions are fairly mature and commonplace, but we want to make sure, again, that every education or training opportunity in the state and prior work experiences amount to some college credit that puts students and working adults on a pathway to a degree or stackable credentials. So this is the work. These are the pathways that are being built out within the Centers of Workforce Innovation. Excuse me. So again, we want to respect your time. We appreciate you all spending so much time with us today. We hope that for the purposes of infrastructure and energy sectors that you received some very valuable information today. And we would like to just alert you to the future collaborative meetings for April. We're changing our model because we've received feedback from those surveys we sent out last month after our collaborative meetings that many of you attend multiple collaborative meetings. So we don't want to take up your whole week with our meetings. So we are switching to a model where the collaborative meetings will happen once a week, focused on a different industry sector. And these are the dates in April. Of course, as long as all of you all are signed up to our Pathways website, you will receive emails about updates, meeting invitations, and other materials. You can hold your phone over this QR code, and the Get Involved page with the information form will pop up, and you can sign up so that you definitely receive those communications from us. Stephanie, any last words?
I just want to thank everyone for spending their morning with us, this cold, rainy spring morning with us, and look forward to seeing you the last week of April, and hopefully it'll be much sunnier weather. And I want to thank Sherwood. He did drop in the chat. There is a offshore wind conference coming up that last week of April in Atlantic City for those who are looking for more information regarding offshore wind industry in general. There's a conference for that. So welcome, or thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in April.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a great day.